Okay. All right. What's going on, my man? Thank you for
Hey.
joining and hopping on and providing us with some information about you, your life, what's going on, all that good stuff.
Yeah, man. Yeah, thank you, Matt. I appreciate it. Appreciate being here. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So, obviously, I know who you are. For those of you that don't,
Yeah.
me and my man here, we're college roommates. We play baseball together, and we're coming back. We're reuniting. And so, for everybody who doesn't know who you are, give us a condensed version of who Steve Mays is. Who are
Yeah,
you, and kind of where you're at.
for sure. Yeah. So, like Matt said, we were college athlete roommates, played baseball. So, but my story in a condensed version is athlete turned biohacker. I mean, I got hurt. I was fortunate enough to play, high school, college, and up into the professional baseball. And I trained, I tried to use every modality that I could get my hands on. And I was constantly learning, studied kinesiology in college, and still wound up getting hurt. My shoulder, I tore a labrum. And so I got disillusioned with fitness and kind of the methods that I was following because I ended up being hurt, and it kind of cost me my career in athletics. And so I still consider myself an athlete now, but I went to work figuring out, like, if I could figure out why I broke down and then build up from there. That's really what my focus has been the last decade or more, just really trying to find shortcuts to better health. And to me, that's what biohacking is, and just creating more efficiency in our training so we get better return for our time, and we get leverage. So now that's what led me to OsteoStrong. Now I'm an owner of an OsteoStrong business. It's a biohacking center. There's 150 locations in 8 countries. So you can look up one near you and get a complimentary session. But it's based on building our skeletal system, building a stronger foundation, which is our bones and our skeletal structure. So that's kind of what led me there, was just injury, breaking down, and not feeling like I was getting the most efficient return for my time, because I'd spend an hour, or more in the gym. And it's like, when you spend that much time for over 45 minutes, your hormones are not going to respond to that. That's what I learned, is that, an hour or more, the intensity can't last the entire duration. So to me, I learned, like, okay, a shorter intensity gives me a better result, but I have a higher intensity for a shorter duration. And that's really what led me to kind of feeling like, okay, this whole biohacking thing, what's the minimum amount of input that I need to receive the output that I'm looking for? And that's kind of what got me on the process of, like, the trainers that I had were great. Everyone that I learned from was great, but I still didn't feel that it was like leverage or as efficient as it could be. They might stretch you out for 30 seconds, might tape your ankle, give you a couple aspirin, but it's like, wait a minute here. What are the standards to where I'm not going to break down, to where I'm not going to get sick and injured?
Yeah.
And so that's what led me on this journey and this path to just biohacking and finding solutions to the most common problems we face as
Totally.
professionals and parents.
Yeah. Soon as you brought that up, the first word that came to my mind was leverage, and it sounds exactly that's what you're looking to do. What can I do to get the most efficient input to maximize it and to be really efficient in the process? So I
Yep.
love that, because I look for that in my own business. It's the same thing, and not just in business, but life as well. So what can I do to maximize my time, be super efficient, but get the biggest bang for my buck? So I think that's great, man. You mentioned OsteoStrong. If you were to describe what OsteoStrong is to me, or somebody who doesn't, like, brand new to this, like you mentioned, is it a gym? Is it not a gym? Kind of dive into that. I know you
Yeah.
guys have a bunch of locations. Like, what
Yeah.
is it?
Yeah. I mean, biohacking came from growth hacking. So it's natural that we work with business people, that we work with professionals and parents, because it came from hacking growth. It's strategies of how to grow at an accelerated rate, and take the learning curve, the time that it would take that out of it.
Mm,
So biohacking, that OsteoStrong is a biohacking center, but it was invented by a medical doctor whose mother had osteoporosis, and they didn't like the options of taking all the pharmaceuticals because they've known have side effects. So he was a biomechanical engineer, and he went to work and he did some research and found who has the highest bone density of anyone out there. And it turned out that it was very clear that gymnasts, or
mm,
athletes, they have the highest bone density, but they also retire when they're like 19 because of joint damage. Right. So they found that high impact activity builds bone density. And we naturally stop doing high impact activity because of risk after the age of 30. And we have a natural diminishment of bone density after the age of 30 by about 1 to 3% a year. So when I looked at this as from a strength perspective, because it's not only correcting osteoporosis, but performance athletes, because even let's say you don't have bone density issues and you're someone in your 20s or 30s who's an athlete looking to perform at a higher level, the power of your muscle cannot exceed how strong your bone is.
Right.
Because I mean, think about it. If the engine was stronger than the frame would just break. It'd be disastrous. You couldn't even move, you'd be too powerful for your own good. And your body knows that. So there's natural inhibitory responses. As your bone density diminishes, so does your muscle mass. And so I thought, okay, to maintain strength longer as we age, strengthening the bone first, and even for performance athletes in the future, you'll either condition the bone to be stronger so your muscles can then have permission to increase, or you'll lose. Because how are you going to compete with someone who can be stronger, faster, hold more power in their muscles, create more force through the ground, run faster? They have more balance and agility. They're more stable.
You're probably not.
They're not going to. Exactly. So what we've seen is, for longevity and optimal hormonal response. So OsteoStrong is 1 10-minute a week session, but it puts you in the position that you would absorb impact.
Wow.
So the research shows you need 4 multiples of your body weight to trigger bone growth in your lower body. And
so you're putting yourself in a position of impact. It takes how many 10-minute session you said?
Yep.
10-minute session, and you're able to control, because I've kind of looked online. I've seen it. They're like these machines. Is that what they are? You're able to
exactly. So it's a device. Like imagine if you were going to jump off a table, or you're going to land. You're not going to land locked out. You're going to land with a slight bend, but you're also like, if you're going to do a vertical jump test, your seat is not going to go all the way to the ground to prepare for the jump. You're only going to bend down, maybe to a 120-degree angle. And because that's your most powerful force production or absorption position. Like you can absorb force, or you can produce the most amount of force.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Absolutely. I do have a question for you, and this might be a silly question, but is it true we get weaker as we age?
Yeah. So that's something that is a common myth. I mean, I think most people do. I think that's like a standard thought is like, well, I'm getting older. Well, life's harder. Well, I just can't do what I used to. Right. It's just this tape that we have in our unconscious mind. And it's like, no, that's false. It doesn't have to be that way, because we've seen members of OsteoStrong, even in their 50s or 60s, they get much stronger in a matter of weeks, months, and they're getting stronger now as they age. But I think that in the past, we've kind of been limited by our skeletal structure. Right. We knew it's based on Wolff's law. So we know that our bones and muscles will adapt based on the force that they're exposed to. But again, if you think after the age of 30, we're not really jumping off tables and like swinging on the monkey bars and doing the things that kids do naturally, And so we do tend to diminish in our strength as we age, but that's why OsteoStrong was built. And that's why strength training is so vital. And we should be looking to build muscle no matter what age we're at, because this muscle is the organ of longevity. So when you look at muscle, you're limited by your bone. So that's why the bones are so important.
Yeah. So would you say this is also a way for it? Because what it sounds like to me, and I'm very brand new at this, is that it's a way to continue to increase the strength and the muscle and the bone density, minus the huge limiting factor, which is the impact, right?
Yeah. So there's risk. Like if, you're going to tell someone in their 40s or 50s to start jumping off the roof of their car and landing.
Yeah.
Like you could naturally do it, but think about the risk. Like if you land just a slight off bit, your ankle is going to be rolled, or, you're going to severely hurt yourself, and that's going to take you out of the game, which is what we absolutely cannot have happen. So think about this too. As you jump off, say you jumped off the table and brace for impact, that impact is only on your bones for a split second. Right. You're going to impact and then come out of it, and now you're done.
Quick.
Yeah. So what OsteoStrong allows you to do is get into that very same impact ready position and produce all the force you can for about 10 seconds. So it's
Wow.
giving you like 10 or 15 seconds of load force exposure on your bones, which is bending and flexing the
Hmm.
bone. And
Yeah.
that irritates the matrix. And then when you release, now it's stimulated to recalcify
Wow.
because your central nervous system says, wow, if we ever have to do that again or brace and hold that amount of force again, we better be a lot stronger so we don't break, you know?
And I would imagine too, it's not just for, from based on what you're saying, it's not, it doesn't sound like it's just for, you know, people who are progressively getting older in that older age group. It sounds like you guys work with athletes. I'm even like the people that are coming to my mind right away are like people who do parkour, right? Like you mentioned, hopping off of objects, and whether it's buildings or tops of cars or whatever, I would think they would be extremely beneficial to something like this, or like,
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
all skill levels.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. So any athlete that wants to improve their power, balance, agility, like you're saying, parkour athletes, it actually helps your neural performance. So your
Hmm.
brain is able to learn faster in the 30 minutes following an OsteoStrong session. So stability in your joints, proprioception. I mean, all of that is enhanced when you can load at OsteoStrong. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
taking it to another level. Now we're talking about the neural level, right? So now it's like that's a
Hmm.
game changer. Most people are just thinking about the muscle side of things. I think most people don't even think about the bone density, which is huge, right? Especially as we age, like you're mentioning. But this, I think, the most important thing to point out too is this is for all skill levels. Like this isn't just for one individual, particular person. I think people, like we mentioned before, are kind of on the limited on the time frame. And you mentioned what's the average length of a session, or like frequency recommended for in a week?
Yeah. It's one session a week. So think about the metabolic rate of your muscle. Like the muscle protein synthesis completes in 36 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So from the time you stimulate your muscles, you can do it again in a day or two, or 36 hours, right?
In a
So
10-minute session.
2 days. But your bones take about 5 to 10 days.
Mm.
So as you work out your muscles, you should do strength training 3 to 4 days a week. But OsteoStrong, because your metabolic cycle of your bone is longer and it takes
Mm.
longer to recalcify the bones, the stimulus only needs to be 5 to 10 days apart. So
Wow, that's
like
awesome. Because the
four,
intensity is
yeah,
very high. It's a short amount of time, so you need your bones need time to adapt.
yeah,
Interesting.
yep, yep. So it takes time, and in fact, doing it more will set your results back a little bit.
Sure.
You actually won't get as good a result. So 3 to 5 times a month is ideal. And the other thing is the limiting factor sometimes in strength is our ligaments and our tendons.
Mm.
So what happens is the adaptation of the tendons to the bone. It connects the muscle of the bone, and that thickens. It's called fibrocartilage uptake, and it actually starts to rebuild tendons and ligaments, which is very hard to do. It's very hard to do, but with the constant tension and the amount of load that you're exposed to at OsteoStrong, you're able to build and feel like you're 17, 18 years old again.
Oh, it's awesome. So if anybody who feels like they're either hitting plateaus or they're finding areas where they're like you mentioned in your experience, like you're going through constant injuries and you felt like you're performing at a high level, but you just kept having these nagging injuries. So I'm thinking from a personal perspective, like if I'm somebody who has those nagging injuries, or I feel like I can just never get strong, is OsteoStrong something you would recommend for those type of people?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. If you have a joint pain, like lower back, knee pain, arthritis, we've had people come in 3 sessions and their arthritis that they've had for 10 years is all of a sudden
Wow.
gone. And it's
Yeah.
like their knees. I'm thinking of Craig specifically. He's in his 50s, but he's a triathlete. He's like super competitive.
Mm-hmm.
He drove from Sacramento to Reno every week.
Wow.
And within 2 or 3 sessions, I think it was his third session, he reported back his arthritis in his knees gone.
Wow.
He's biking, he's running, swimming, obviously, and it's incredible to see.
So yeah, that is incredible. What helps us feel young again? What's something that helps us feel young?
Yeah, so when you're pushing at OsteoStrong, you go way heavier than you think you're capable of with a weight, because with a weight you're limited by your weakest position. So when you get to what you're capable of in your strong position, you start shaking.
Mm-hmm.
It's called stabilization firing, and it starts like almost shivering or quivering or vibrating. Your muscles start firing, and that's reaching your limit of what you're capable of. So you don't have to do this at Osteodrome. You can do this anywhere, but you reach that limit where you're shaking, and that increases your growth hormone. And as adults, growth hormone is not going to make us grow. It's going to repair our body.
Right.
It's a repair hormone. So the first thing to feel young is invoke repair, like start upregulating growth hormone by doing exercise that requires stabilization and stabilization firing, because that's going to upregulate growth hormone, which repairs your body at a much faster level. It keeps you lean and it makes you feel energized. So that's one way to stay young. Number two, I would say have some sort of range of motion training, like understand range of motion and have a standard for movement to prevent injury, because pain and injury comes from tension and shortened muscles. I always use an example, like if your biceps meant to be 18 inches long, but we're at our phone and we're at our computer, or we're eating or sitting or driving, we're shortened. It's shortened to 16 or 15 inches. And when we spend time in that position, it now sets at 15 inches. And so those extra 3 inches that we can't move, that is what we call pain and injury.
Man,
so
it's funny you mentioned that. I know an individual in particular who he's been around the weightlifting community for years. He's competed at the highest level, and his arms are kind of stuck like this. So he can't extend them all the way out. Right. I can't even imagine how many bicep curls that guy's done, like pull-ups, chin-ups. Right. And so he's physically stuck like in this position, like not quite 90, but he can't extend it all the way out.
Right. Yeah. And we'll think about the repetitive motion. He might be done. How many reps did he do with weight, with tension? Man, that's like iterating the muscle. So it's being trained to be shorter.
Yep.
So that's why it's so important, because that's what we call aging. Yeah. When we can't move to our full capability, like we could when we were a kid.
Right.
That's why we feel older, is because we can't move like when we were a kid.
Yeah.
It's like, if you want to stay like you're 17, move like you're 17. And if you bring kids in, they can do every range of motion test or flexibility test to a standard. And the thing is, I don't think people understand, if you can just reach a standard, and it's part of a mindset, it's a fixed mindset, I'm not flexible, or a growth mindset that, hey, if I spend time lengthening my muscle and pulling those frozen parts of the muscle apart and getting new blood flow into that tissue, like I can get more flexible, I can build flexibility. And when you reach a certain standard, when you can create an outcome and reach that standard with flexibility, pain and injury goes away. And so that would be the second way I would say, like, how can we stay young, is move like you're young.
Love that. What are some ways that you guys measure force? Because I know you're talking about reducing joint pain and things like that. I know you guys have different machines and apparatus that you have going about that, but what would you give as far as advice or recommendation to, how do you go about measuring force?
Yeah, that's a great question. I love this topic. So if we think about the mathematics of it, and we lift a 300-pound weight 15 times, right? And we might do 3 sets of that. So that's whatever that is, total volume is going to be around 5,000 total pounds, just based on the math, right? So when we can use variance, meaning variable resistance, we now have access to lift heavier and do more repetitions. And the key is that it's not 300 pounds in every position. Because what OsteoStrong shows us, that we have a 7 times force output capability in one position than another. So a perfect example is the push-up. You're much stronger at the top, and that's why kids can get away with it and they just cheat, stay right at the top of the push-up,
right?
Because they're stronger. It's harder when your nose is close to the ground.
Yep.
So basically the doctor who invented this uncovered that and actually decided to develop a device. It's called the X3 bar, but to load in accordance with the strength curve. So now with variable resistance, I might be able to do 500 pounds where I'm capable for, say, 25 repetitions. Okay. Yeah. So already I'm exceeding the total volume of my first set with weights. And then in the mid range, where it's only, say, 200 pounds, I can do another 8 to 10 reps.
That's awesome.
And then in the low range where it's only 100, I can do maybe 3 or 4 more. So I add that on, and that's where they actually get the name of the bar is X3, because it's 3 times the volume that you're actually putting on the muscle.
Makes sense.
So that's when I uncovered that. I met the doctor and was like, whoa, this is incredible. This is revolutionary. If I would have had this when I was playing, I might still be playing.
Right.
Like, who knows? You know what I mean? Like, I would have been way stronger. I would have been more mobile and flexible, and I would have been repairing my body at a much higher level, because the stabilization firing and the growth hormone factor, like, I would have repaired much faster.
Totally.
There's a reason athletes, illegally take human growth hormone.
Yeah.
But you can naturally produce that through your exercise.
Wow. Would you recommend somebody who doesn't have, I know you guys mentioned you do have a lot of locations. What would be the next best thing if somebody, I mean, like your client's driving from Sacramento to Reno, like he's diehard, but what if you didn't? What if you were kind of limited on the location? I know you mentioned the X3, like what are some things that somebody could do to at least start their process to like get going?
Yeah. So there's a couple of, biohacks devices. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, an X3 bar is meant as an at-home fitness device. Cool. So you can look at getting that. A rebounder, I would recommend a rebounder, which is like a mini trampoline.
Okay.
And that's another biohack. It's 10 minutes of rebounding is equivalent to about a 33-minute walk, just based on the study and the science that NASA's put out, because they did a lot of this testing on astronauts. And so they found that the rebound effect, because you're creating compressive force at the bottom, and then at the top, you're weightless, so you can hydrate and get more nutrition into the cell at the top. Crazy. So it's really good. So that's hyper efficient. You can get that on Amazon, rebounder, little mini trampoline, and do 10 to 20 minutes of that. It's like my activity for the day in 20 minutes rebounding.
That's crazy, because I've seen people doing that, right? Like, and it goes back to what you guys talk about, like, hey, you can get a lot more intensity. It could be variable, and we could do it a lot less time. And it's the same exact thing that you're saying. You said it was equivalent to a much longer walk by just going 5-10 minutes on a rebounder or a trampoline. Yep. Like, man, it sounds like it's so, and it brings us back to the first topic that you mentioned. And one of the first things you talked about was like, we're trying to get leverage here. We're trying to be efficient with what it is that we do in our process. So I'm just connecting all the dots now. Everything's starting to make sense.
Yep. Yeah. And with the X3 too, it's one set. Because you're loading in accordance, you fatigue the muscle much deeper. So you get more of a growth response, but you only need one exposure. Like you only need one load exposure per cycle to create the response. And he says a lot, like, how many sets do you need in the sun to get a tan? It's like, I don't know, probably one. You go out and get pink, you come in. Like, okay.
Right.
So I'm thinking like, okay, that's the same thing. It's an adaptive response. Like, how many exposures in the cold do you need before we start to shiver? Like, we just need one exposure, and it's intense enough to trigger a change. And that's the whole philosophy around biohacking, is like, what is the minimum effective dose that we need to trigger the desired outcome or to the desired change? And so, we can do that for joint pain. We can do that for muscle strength, muscle building, mental energy, clarity, balance, posture. You can do that for all of it.
Love it, man. One more question. How do we take control of our health? If you were to give somebody advice, like, there's some people that'll have any excuse in the world that you're thinking about out there that as to why they can't be healthy or they can't become healthy. Like, what's your advice to those people? How do they take control of their health?
Yep, exactly. I mean, just like what we said before, is your mindset fixed? This is who you are. You're either flexible or not. You're either healthy or not. You're either strong or you're not. Because that's a mindset. I don't know if we can help those people, right? That's a fixed mindset. Like, if you if you're more married to that story of why you can't do it, like, no one is going to be able to help you, really, right? But if you have a growth mindset of that, things are changing constantly, and you can grow and get better and learn and find new skills and new abilities, then we can definitely help. The first thing I love that you said was the motivation. That flicker of motivation is just, it's just there for a little bit. So if instead of being motivated, if we can find that long-term vision, like you're saying, but be committed. As soon as you're committed, there's a shift that happens in your nervous system, and it becomes who you are.
Yep.
A lot of people reference this as your identity.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, who you are doesn't require effort,
Mhm.
right? I don't have to get myself motivated to show up to do strength training because it's who I am.
Yeah.
I do it every day. Like I am that. So
Mhm.
it's kind of a mindset shift, but it's more of an energetic shift of like, there's no debate anymore. It's just who I am. And that's the difference, I think, between trying to stay motivated and trying to stay committed. So
Totally.
control to me is like, hey, just become the thing that you want to become, like become it. And then
Yeah.
it's not a battle. It's just who you are and you follow through. And it's part of
Yeah.
your mindset. Um, the second thing I would advise on taking control is set and setting is everything. Like it's not everything, but 80% of it. If you can control the set and the setting on like how you set up your environment. So sleep, for example, if you can set the environment up to create a good sleeping environment, then you're going to sleep better and you're going to get a better result and better outcome. And when we talk about leverage, sleep is the first thing that you can get leverage on your hormones. You can
Yep.
improve your performance, right? You can improve your strength. You can
Yep.
lose fat. You can stay more hydrated. I mean, there's just everything that comes from better sleep. So for me, that's leverage. But again, set and setting, right? Create the environment in which you're going to thrive, or create the environment that's going to trigger the change that you want.
Totally agree with you. Yeah. And,
Yeah.
and you mentioned too, like environment, they could also be environment who you're surrounding yourself with, the positive people, the people who support you in doing this, the people who support you in doing better or not. You could be surrounding yourself with some bad people, right? Who are kind of
Yeah.
pulling you down. It's the crabs in a bucket mentality, right? Just
Mm-hmm.
pulling you back down, trying to stay with them.
Yeah.
And I find it with people in my community as well, like in the health and fitness space, where people or a client is trying to better themselves and they have a family member who wants to push cake on them and desserts and they see them doing really well. But I always tell them misery loves company, right? So they don't necessarily disagree with what you're doing, but they want you to come back and join them. So it could be an
Yeah.
environment from that standpoint too. I love that you mentioned sleep. Sleep is something that people always overlook. It's one of the things that can literally move the needle and sway ourselves on a continuum, either for the better or for the not, right? And so I
Right.
think you hit it on the head with sleep. I think so many people overlook just sleep alone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. I love that. Yeah. The people you associate with, you know, our life is going to reflect what the people expect from us.
Yeah.
Like, what do our closest relationships expect us to do? And that's what we'll do.
Yep.
You know, so get around, like, that's what again, like creating set and setting. And then having a physical practice, having something that you can check the box on every day. Yes or no. Did you do it or did you not?
Yes.
And it's binary. It's kind of this thing. It's like, hey, you either did or you didn't. There is no real gray area.
Yeah.
So something else you mentioned though was getting small wins. And just earlier, I was talking with a friend saying how, like, if we can break the first step, like everyone's thinking about, okay, if I'm going to do something, what's the first step I would do? If you can break the first step into 3 small steps, you might get the same first step done, but now you've built momentum because you've done 3 steps.
Like it.
And then you go to step 2 and you do that again. Now you've done 6 steps. And then you get to the third step where before you'd had 3 iterations, but now you have 9.
Yeah.
And that's gaining leverage over the same experience.
Yep.
So
like, hey, man,
I think that's super.
You don't have to try to shove the whole pizza down your mouth. You can cut it into slices, right? It goes
Yeah.
down. It'll all get there at the same spot.
Yeah. Like physical practice. And how do you check the box? What's your metric? How are you measuring whether you're winning the game or not?
Yeah.
Like that. What is your measurement? And for me, it's a checking a box. Yes or no. Did I do my practice today? Did I measure my sleep? That's the first thing I recommend, is tracking and measuring your sleep. What's your metric for knowing your quality of sleep? So that's a great way to start.
Love it, man. Well, I appreciate your time. Thank you for explaining not only you and your journey, but what OsteoStrong is. I had no idea. You shed some light on it. I'm definitely more aware of it now. You already let me know of a location that's close to me, so I'm excited to do that out and just go and check it out, man.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, check out OsteoStrong. It's pretty common to do a free session. And then we also do training with the X3 bar and biohacking coaching. So if you want to like learn how to even biohacking your business, I found a lot of women CEOs really like biohacking their business because they want to be more efficient and maximizing the resources they have, but also maximizing the potential that's there.
Awesome.
And we just do that through efficiency. But yeah, Backyard Biohacker, that's where I'm at.
Love it. What
So,
other, is that all your social media? Is it all the same?
yeah, it's at Backyard Biohacker. I'm going to have a website coming on pretty soon with our podcast. But yeah, it's all at backyardbiohacker.com, or on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all the
Very cool.
normal platforms. So
All right,
cool,
my
man.
man. Thank
Well,
you for
thank
your
you.
time. I appreciate you.
Yeah, I appreciate you, Matt. Thanks.